slips.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ottumwa City Council meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and if everybody would rise, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Here.
Councilmember Pope. Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Galloway. Here. Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
The next item is our city administrator's report to the council and the citizens of Ottumwa, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Rath.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I did not have too much to report on tonight. The one thing I want to just mention is that we are starting the budget process for the next year, so we're currently underway with that. And then also there was at the last meeting talk about inviting Bridge City Sanitation again to a meeting. So we'll look to set a date in January. I'm thinking outside of a council meeting, like a work session type thing or special meeting. So we'll identify January or early February, get that set, invite the public to be able to express anything that they have, council to share their concerns that they've heard, and invite the garbage company, Bridge City Sanitation, to be present to address anything that they're doing. And if they're not able to attend that evening, at least take a list of all those things, compile that, and then request some kind of action plan to address the issues that are identified.
Does council have any questions for Phil? Okay, thank you. The next item is where I ask if there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak on any of tonight's agenda items. Would you please indicate by filling out one of the forms there on the ledge? Do we have any up here? No? Okay. The next thing is public hearing, and I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and I believe Larry is going to present on this.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the City Hall Improvements Project.
It's all yours, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. One of the things, we've got our consultant here, Paul Newman with Willard Hoffman. And we're going to cover the City Hall project, the remodeling. Some of the key features that we are addressing is a boiler that's over 100 years old. We do have some photos and stuff that we'll show when we get into the presentation. We're also looking at updating the HVAC. It's kind of a cobbled up system that's been placed over many years. We've had a lot of repairs. The other thing that one of the key features we want to bring in, makeup air, fresh air. This building currently doesn't have any air in the system. It's just what we have here, or if you open a window. The other thing that we want to address with this project is ADA requirements. That's one of the things that we've been looking at actually for over 10 years, as far as how do we update and meet those requirements. What I'll probably do is I'll just have Paul start down through the plans. We'll just go floor by floor. And then if there's any questions, we'll just answer them as we go. Paul, do you want to just jump in and kind of cover some of the main key features?
Where are the plans going to be up? All right, so the plan that we're looking at up there, that is the basement. And so the improvements in the basement are going to be, one, we're going to make it safer with the stairway going out is going to be fire rated, which is required. And then the restrooms, right now there's one single restroom down there, and it will be remodeled into two ADA accessible men's and women's restrooms. And then all the rooms will be painted. The walls and ceilings will be painted. So it won't be black and gray down there. So it will be much brighter with new lighting as well in that space. So that's really the extent of the basement. We're also in the lower left-hand corner. There was an old wood floor sleeper system in there, and the wood floor has been taken out and the crumbled concrete is left. So we're going to prep that and then put a new concrete topping over it to make that room more usable. So.
One of the reasons that we need to do this, and we can get into, in order to keep operations going with the current staff, we will have to, in one of the phases, move some members. We still haven't got that worked out exactly how or which offices will go where within City Hall in order to keep business running.
All right, so this is first floor, and this is what we would consider phase one of the remodeling of first floor. And it really is addressing ADA with the entrances and exits, and then also the restrooms are being remodeled into being ADA accessible. And then kind of the back house of the area, a couple of offices and the break room and that are going to be kind of freshened up with some new flooring, new paint, and really just bringing it up to date, I guess, in some of the areas. New lighting as well, along with the new electrical, HVAC, and all that. You can go to the next one. So this is first floor, phase two. And so it's mainly the lower 2/3 of the plan there. And so really the big piece of this is bringing the original public corridor, public lobby back. Right now, it's completely covered with drop ceiling and these paneled partitions. So we're going to take all of that out and restore the terrazzo floor, and then also open the ceiling up to the plaster coffers up there, arches, which are actually in pretty decent shape when we got above the ceiling to look at them. And then in between the columns, bringing it back to similar to what it was when it was a post office, and restoring the columns. We've opened up several of the columns, and some of the marble is still there, some is gone. The plaster is kind of hit and miss depending on what's there. And so it's really taking it back to what it was when it was originally built, the columns, and then the infill in between the columns, which was the post office boxes and all that. And then also bringing in more security. So their public will be coming into the lobby, but will not be able to wander back into the offices and that. So there'll be two main points of entrance and exit out of the back offices there. All right, go to the next one. And then on second level, the main focus on second level is making the bathrooms ADA accessible. Tried to work within as much of the existing footprint as we could, because they have really nice terrazzo floors and there's nice marble wainscoting that's in those restrooms. So we'll be replacing the toilet partitions, the fixtures themselves, making them large enough now to be ADA accessible, and also getting new HVAC into those areas. That fact, the entire second floor. And then we will also make the dais up there where the council is sitting ADA accessible by placing a chairlift in the back hallway back there, so that that platform is accessible. We can go to the next one. All right, then third floor is very similar to second floor. We're mainly concentrating on the restrooms, making them ADA accessible, restoring the terrazzo floors, cleaning the marble wainscoting up, still leaving the ceilings wide open. There's really nice high ceilings in there, repainting, finishing the terrazzo floor in the hallway. And then back in the lower left-hand corner, there's a raised area of offices that's actually right above here, and it's about 5'8" difference. So we're putting in a chairlift there as well to make that accessible. And then we're also working in the fire escape area. That's the second means of egress out of the third floor. And so we're building in a area of refuge, so someone in a wheelchair could get out there, and then there'll be the ability to call for help in that, so they could be rescued. So that's really the third floor, and that's really kind of in a little bit of a nutshell there, the main remodeling points of the 3 floors.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Newman or Larry?
I would just say, not necessarily a question, but after the last public meeting that we had regarding this, actually the last few public meetings that we've had regarding this issue, this is really a good project for City Hall. Number one, because this is one of the unique gems that we have in this community. It's the most noticeable building in the community, so I think it's important that we do what we can to keep it up. We have not done a good job as a city over the last 100 years or so. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a 100-year-old boiler that we're dealing with. The safety and security of our employees, both, with the COVID, we've seen that not having air turnover in the building has been a little bit of a challenge. But even anybody who's been in here in the summer or the winter time can see that there's a little bit of a challenge with our air turnover. In the modern times that we're in, having some security down on the first level to limit access for people coming in the building is important. And something that's very personally important to me, if we want to have full public participation in our government, then we need it to be accessible. And we don't have very good accessibility for ADA compliance right now. So this will hopefully take care of that and will allow full public participation. So that's, I think that's a good thing for City Hall. And I think that, looking at some of the funding options, I'm not sure if we're going to be talking about that right now, but we're kind of at a unique time to avoid making this somebody else's problem 5-10 years down the road, or even 15 years down the road. We are at a unique point in time that we can address this issue now with limited borrowing capacity. So I think that this is a really good project, and I think that we should be moving forward with it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do want to add a little bit. We're going to go out to bid tomorrow, and bids will be received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on January 24th, 2023 at 2 p.m. A bid report and bid award recommendation will be presented to the City Council meeting of February 7th of 2023, or later date is determined by staff. I have listed the funding if we want to go over that, Phil.
Yep, I can definitely do that. So earlier, I guess it was last year when we did the bond for 2022, $700,000 was identified for this project for the HVAC aspect of that. We knew that we were going to need to do some portion of that, and that the boiler primarily. And so dollars were bonded towards this project. At the same time, with the estimates we had, that was only a fraction of what the HVAC project was going to cost. The remainder dollars of what we had from the Recovery Plan Act dollars from that first year, $809,000, was put towards this project. So that put a little over $1.5 million towards the project. It was estimated that there was going to be about another $800,000 to $1 million of project costs for the HVAC. So we're not all the way there. And then there's some the remodel aspect of this project as well. To round out the project, the request that was made from staff was to use $1.3 million of the ARPA Year 2 money. So I think this is what Councilman Rowe was talking about, having that unique situation of these dollars that can only be used for specified things and dollars that we did not otherwise have. So using a little over $2 million of the Recovery Plan Act dollars towards this project that is needed. That left a gap of about $660,000. One of the other things that the council was able to do earlier this year was to put franchise fees in place. Those dollars that we had not budgeted to the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, we're estimating to receive about $700,000 between when they go in place to the end of the fiscal year, and requesting a capital project, including buildings like this, to use those dollars. And then going forward, we would budget future franchise fees for other items. But for this particular case, looking at utilizing that for this very specific project. And as Councilman Rowe had mentioned, a very necessary project at this time.
One of the other things that we probably point out that we pretty much glossed over was the fact that this started late 17, early 18 with feasibility studies on different types of equipment. Everything we've looked at that's going to be included or has been included in this design is energy efficient lighting, heating, and then of course what we talked about several times is some sort of air makeup for we can get an air exchange rate in this building, which is current code. Everything meets current building codes, fire codes, stuff like that. Very critical and to move us forward, as Mark said, into more of a modern building.
And should reduce energy costs going forward, everything else as we go
Right.
with the updated, more efficient systems. The boiler system is going to go from the current system to like a 5-stage mini system.
Yeah, highly efficient compared to
Yeah.
what we have. The raw efficiency, I don't think we could even determine because that's been relayed to us that that's part of an old boiler system that come from locomotive type systems.
Which will have annual reduced heating and cooling costs then to the city.
Yeah, we've already got a rebate from Alliant based on the energy savings projections.
And as Councilman Rowe said, you know, there's no fresh air intake into this building, and that's not a healthy situation for the people that work in this building. So that's going to be another huge advantage to replacing the heating and air conditioning system in this entire building.
And it will be zoned. Some have 2 offices, some have 4s. So we'll be able to control the temperature a little closer within those areas. Currently, for those that work here and perhaps visit, you know, we have areas that can be as low as 62. It just varies throughout the building. Other areas, it could be 82 at the same time. This will balance the heat to where there is kind of a more of a desirable work environment.
Do you have any idea what the estimated time frame would be for all this to get finished, roughly? I mean, I know it depends on a lot of things, but are we talking 2 years, a year and a half, or?
I'll let Paul go into great detail, but we already have got feedback on some of the major components like the main entry or MCC type gear. That's a year out. The boilers, I'm told, are more readily available. Timing will be everything to where the existing system will have to be taken out of service just as soon as we can. There are some stuff that's going to be city performed, meaning that we're going to let separate contracts. It's not included in the base asbestos removal. Can you put that picture up of that boiler? We know we have 2 rooms left. We have done some mitigation in this building at other times. We do know we have a couple significant amounts that have to be removed. As you can tell, and the interesting part, that's 2.5 to 3 inches thick. So that room, the room behind it, there will be a lot of stuff to remove.
All the asbestos covered pipes and stuff you're talking about?
Right. Part of the building's been done under another program, but we have 2 rooms, this major part, and there's some in the vertical stack that we'll have to address. Like I said, we're going to do some separate contracts. And instead of doing that, since that's a specialized field, HVAC is a specialized field, we think that we can probably get a better price going directly. And if you have a better detailed on the time.
Yeah, not a ton detail, but you know, with some of the equipment being a year out, be able to get, you know, you're probably looking at least 18 to 24 months would be, I think, a fairly safe estimate.
Does council have any other questions for Larry or Mr. Newman?
Hey, Larry, didn't you say that boiler, to your best knowledge, is from 1914?
The estimate that was given to us through our feasibility study that it's 90 years old. I've heard a couple different dates. I mean, the building I think was completed in 14. It started in 11, somewhere in there when it was completed. We think it's original.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments they want to make on this project, since this is a public hearing?
This is one of the arches that Paul was referencing. As you can see, they are in good shape. We'll have some repair where they've done some supports to hang ceilings. So the other thing that this illustrates, the cabling for the internet system will be something that we do outside of this contract. So it's going to be very interesting the way stuff was run. We'll have to figure out cable trays and a few other things. So it's going to be a juggle on this project to keep it moving. Show the graded one, the steel grade. This is what we referenced the other night in the work session. This is where they just cut these off to put the false ceilings in. These will be restored. There will be glass in order to get your acoustical separation between the public area and the offices, and also to balance some airflow. They will be just duplicated and restored. It'll be a really good look when we're done.
Could we go back to the boiler for just 1 second? Just to make a quick point to the public. For years, maybe decades now, at least the city of Ottumwa, nationally speaking, there's been a big conversation about asbestos remediation. And we've been talking about that here to a significant level on a lot of the old buildings, yet the building that we're having these meetings in, there's 2 full rooms of asbestos. So just to point that out.
And one of the things, and Gene's done a great job keeping this thing limping along. We've had to have different repairs where they welded the actual boiler tubes. I think we definitely know we're beyond the life of this equipment.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 285, 2022, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the City Hall improvements project. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 285, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Lease agreement between the City of Ottumwa and the U.S. Representative Zach Nunn. Recommendation: approve the lease agreement for approximately 730 square feet of office space at City Hall, room 201A and 201B, 105 East 3rd Street, Ottumwa, Iowa 52501, with U.S. Representative Zach Nunn.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to take this.
Yes. So actually, as of just today, Representative Miller Meeks, Marion Miller Meeks' office, they were using this same space, and they had their final inspection and turned in the keys earlier today. They were up through January 2nd of this coming year. And with her changing boundaries, won't be using that office. We were approached by Representative Zach Nunn's office to see if we'd be interested in continuing that relationship and offering that space. So this is an updated lease, updates the dates, and also updates the cost per square foot and the amount there. So it added some inflationary factors in there. The old agreement was at, I think, $288 a square foot, and this is at $312 a square foot. So over the couple years, adding that in. Everything else is pretty much the same, and I think it's had some benefit in having the space here at City Hall and being a conduit for the public being able to meet with a federal representative.
Council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Approve the annual urban renewal report for the Westgate Urban Renewal Area, Airport Urban Renewal Area, Wildwood Drive, Highway 34 Urban Renewal Area, and the Hospital District, Pennsylvania Avenue Corridor Urban Renewal Areas for the fiscal year of July 2021 through June 2022 for the city of Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation: approve the annual urban renewal reports for fiscal year July 2021 through June 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Phil?
All right. So each year, the city is required to complete and file a report on the revenues and expenditures related to the urban renewal areas that the city maintains. It is a look back period into, at this point, fiscal year 21-22. It covers the urban renewal areas, as City Clerk Reinhardt mentioned. And this is just the factual report of numbers that we have, revenues and expenditures. It does require city council approval, and then that gets submitted to the state.
Any questions for Phil? So this is an annual thing that has to be approved.
Correct.
Okay, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Wapello County Mutual Aid Association Mutual Aid Box Alarm System Plan for Wapello County discussion. Recommendation: understand the upcoming implementation of MABUS for the City of Ottumwa Fire Department.
And it's my understanding we don't have to take a vote on this tonight, right?
Correct. There's nothing, it's a report of what the department is looking at in conjunction with emergency management and the other jurisdictions in the area.
So
And
Fire
there's-
Chief Miller, it's all yours.
All righty, thank you. I'm going to start off by, I know there's been conversation about why this is coming about right now, why we haven't had discussions before tonight. I've been in this position as fire chief for about 13 years, and I might be wrong on this, the way I think about this, but I always thought it's better to have all the information you could possibly have before you take it to council, because if you don't have if you only have half the information, and then questions start getting asked and then stuff gets out there, which I didn't want to do. The reason it's coming to council now to have a discussion of whether to do this is because next month is going to be a game changer for public safety in Wapello County and the city of Ottumwa, when they have that new dispatch system that's coming about. With that being said, so good things are coming, and I think that good things are coming. I want to talk about the MABUS system and how this is going to affect the Ottumwa Fire Department. Tim Richmond is here. Tim Richmond has been working on this for 2 years each. He's the organizer of this. He's behind all the paperwork, all the stuff that's been done on this. But I'm going to discuss how this is going to affect the fire department. And then if you have questions, maybe I can answer, or maybe Tim can make some comments also. The MABUS system is a system. One of our sister cities, Burlington, has a MABUS system. They've had it for a long, long time. Basically, what we're wanting to do is put on paper what we've been doing for a long, long time. Mutual aid calls and the MABUS system is really, it's apples and oranges. On a mutual aid call, we would get called, one of the departments would call and say they would get on scene for a structure fire or whatever they had, hazmat call, whatever, and they would call for help. A MABUS system, what that's going to do is that will affect how we do things. We'll be arriving on the initial alarm for some places in Wapello County, and a lot of places we won't be doing that. And all the information, Deputy Corey Benj, he's done all the paperwork that the council members have. Corey did a lot of paperwork on this. He did all the background on it, all the data on that, and he's done a really, really good job of exactly what we've done, how this is going to affect us. And I'm going to give you, you guys already got the figures ahead of it. I'm going to just maybe read this out to you guys so you understand exactly how this is going to affect the Ottumwa Fire Department on responding out in the county or when the county comes into us. On the page here, this page here, where it says the Ottumwa Fire Department mutual aid given 2018 to present. This tells you how many times we have went out in the county. And if you see on the right-hand side of this document, it says OFD part of MABUS plan, whether we would respond on these calls, and the ones that are in yellow are the ones that we would have responded. there's on the second page of this, you'll see in the red part of this document, all the red stuff, that's hazmat calls that we have responded to in Wapello County since 2018. And we've had a lot of hazmat calls in the county. The next document is when Wapello County Fire Department has come into the city of Ottumwa and helped us out. And as you can see, you can see all the facts right ahead of you, so I don't have to really read them to you. It's really pretty close how many times Wapello County has came in and assisted us and how many times we went out in the county and assisted them. Now, some of the places we go to is the reason we go. I'll give you a hint. Cass Township is where Chillicothe is. And we have responded out there. We've had 4 fires out there, and they respond to us. They call us to respond there because that's where the Chillicothe power plant is. We're the only fire department in Wapello County that can reach that to help them put that out. So that's one reason, and that's 4 responses we've had there since 2018. Other places where we would respond to would be Center Township, which surrounds the city of Ottumwa. And Agency Fire, you can see Agency, the city of Agency, we would respond there because they have fire hydrants in the city of Agency. The next document, Wapello County Building Fires responded to. This is the next document I'm going to talk a little bit about. And that's how many, the ones in yellow on this page is the ones that the Ottumwa Fire Department, if this is adopted, would respond on the initial alarm. And you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 9 of them. Wapello County aided the fire department, and there would be 4 responses to that. So the numbers are relatively equal on us going out in the county and the county going in to help us out. A couple other things I want to talk about is how this is going to affect the fire department. And I know there's been a discussion about, well, which truck would go out? How much manpower would go out on a mutual aid on Mavis call? What we have done in the past and what we plan on doing in the future would be 1 apparatus and 3 staff. Now the question has been, what's going to happen if there's a fire in the city of Ottumwa, structure fire in the city of Ottumwa, when we have people out in the county? We're going to do that like we've always done business. We're going to call people in, and we're going to take care of business. If we have to do an all call, we can do that. One thing about going out in the county that we've noticed in the past is when we go out there and we send people out in the county on a mutual aid call, we send 1 truck and 3 staff. Normally there are very few times are they ever not there, only 2 hours, and they're back at the home. That's pretty much the norm. The exception of that rule will be hazmat calls that the SORG responds to. We cover 11 counties for hazmat. In the last year and a half, we've had a banner year because we've ran a lot of hazmat calls with a lot of different things. How that works is when we go to hazmat calls is we send our staff to wherever the call is. We call people back in to fill up to keep us up at the level that we're normally used to working with. And any cost of that would not be by the city. That'd be by where we responded on the hazmat call. That's state code that says if you have a hazmat call, you can bill the people that caused the incident. So that would cost the city absolutely nothing. The fires itself, though, that would possibly cost the city a little bit of money because we would be sending 2 people or 3 people out for a minimum of 2 hours, and that would cost the city a little bit of money. Another discussion has been had is what truck are we going to take? What we've always done is we've always taken the Southside truck. We have a mutual aid call out in the county. The reason we take that is because we have 3 people at that station at all times. And we take the truck that's in that station, and then if we need to call people in to fill that, we will do that. But I want to be very clear that if we have, our number 1 priority is going to be the citizens of Ottumwa. And if we have a structure fire, we're going to have the people there to take care of that. That's just how we do business. We've done that for a long, long time, and I don't see that's not going to change. So I know another call is where we have the second fire. It's going to be the same thing. We're still going to call people in to respond to the fires and stuff.
I guess I have a question on your hazmat calls. If that's a 10 county area, 11 county area, then is there other manpower out in those other counties that you can also call upon, or does all that come out of Ottumwa?
Under our 28, that's a great question, by the way. Under our 28E agreement, as we are responding to anytime we have a hazmat call, What we do, Mayor, is we go teach our counties hazmat classes. So 7 or 8 of the counties we cover, we teach hazmat classes. But anytime we go out, we rely on the Ottumwa Fire Department or hazmat, our techs that we have. We do use the local fire departments every call we go on because that's what we do. And there's a reason we go train them, because we know what they are going to have, what kind of training they have, and they know what we're going to bring to the table.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions from council?
I have a few. So you mentioned, you talked about the staffing and the truck that would be going out in there. And one of the things when you and myself and Assistant Chief Benj met the other day, I discussed was we have 3 people that are out in the county on a call, and then EMT calls come in that we would normally be sending 2 firefighters out to assist in those. So that leaves a little bit of an imbalance of people that are available for fire calls. So how is that reconciled?
If we have somebody out on a hazmat call out wherever it's at, and then we have a structure fire, is that what you're asking? Is we have a medical call? Or
Right.
if we would have a medical, and this happens more and more, is what we do, council members, we say we are not available at this time. So we do not respond to a medical call while we're at a structure fire.
Okay. So how deep, for public record, how deep does our all call go as far as available staff? Because I'm looking at 3 people out on a call right now. That would bring 3 people in on overtime. If there was a structure fire that was severe enough in county that we had to send the air truck out to, that would send another 2 people out into the county. How deep of a force do we have that we can call people in to make sure that we have coverage inside city limits?
I think what you're talking about is the rehab trailer. Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about? Okay, the rehab trailer, that's a whole different deal. That's a great question, by the way. The rehab trailer, what we do is we provide a service to all the fire departments in Wapello County. We took this a couple years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. We started doing this, and because of the, the cold and the winter and the hot summer, the firefighters need to get where they can get in and get rehabbed. So we have got this nice trailer with a lot of stuff on it. What would happen is myself, the deputy chief, or the EMA Tim Richmond would be allowed to take that trailer out. That rehab trailer does not go out a lot. I could go back and get the information. I don't think it's went out 3 times in the last 2 years, but that's a situation where we would take that, and we wouldn't. Occasionally, we'd have to rely on the crew working to take people out on that. But we're going to change that. It's in the agreement right now. How that would work is they would go on initial call, and that's going to be language that's going to be changed, because they would not go out on an initial call. They would go out later on if needed.
Okay. You just mentioned changing the agreement. One of the things, again, that we talked about in the meeting was this would be something, if it's not working out in a year, we could just walk away from it. And it appears to me that we're talking about possibly 2 different things, because I didn't see in the MABUS paperwork where there was like a trial period. So are you talking about walking away from the MABUS agreement or walking away from the 2080 agreement that we have?
What the plan would be, Mark, if this is adopted, is in January of 2024, we do a reevaluation of what went right the first year, what went wrong the first year, what needs to change. Do we need to continue doing that? That's going to be in the paperwork, because I know that was a concern, and I've already talked to Tim about that. That's something we need to add, is that this is work like we thought it was going to work, that we can walk away from it.
But that's specific to the MABUS agreement, not the 2080 agreement, correct?
The 2080 agreement has been around forever, and this is different from the 2080 agreement. Now, the situation we could have is if we do not accept this, we could still possibly be getting called in for mutual aid calls on down the road.
And the last question that I'll ask is the paperwork that you had presented that had the box call outs for it. It was mentioned that was there's a little bit of confusion on my part. Assistant Chief Benj said that this was the order of the call outs for emergency situations, but then the document itself says that that's the final approved document. So will there be changes to that box call out order, or is the order itself the final agreement?
This is a work in progress. Now, a lot of the work in this has already been done, but there's still going to be changes because we know that when this document is up and running, that there's going to be changes that's going to have to be made, because there is. Anytime you get something new like that, if the changes need to be made, changes will need to be made.
So if memory serves me correctly, there's 3, maybe 4 cities where Ottumwa, like agency city limits, for example, is a box 1 call out. Will there be additional cities added that Ottumwa is a box 1 call out, or does the box 1 call outs for the city of Ottumwa pretty much remain the way that they are in that diagram now?
The way it is right now, we have 4 places where we are a box 1 call out, and there are 3 of them are townships and then the city of agency.
Okay. So that's pretty much going to stay the same with the revised document.
It would be the same, like I said, then in January 24, I say we're going to, if this is adopted, we're going to take a serious look at exactly how it's working. I'll be honest with you. I've been around for a long time, and I think it's important that we can be part of this, because whether we like it or not, we're the big brother of Wapello County Fire Departments, because we have, staff 24/7. 365, and I think it's very important that we do this to help our brother firefighters out. Now, we're talking about 3 calls a year is what we're talking about since 2018 on the MABUS plan. If it was implemented, how many calls would have went out on this? We're not talking a tremendous amount of calls. Will this be more calls if we adopt it? It's a possibility, but I don't know. I'm just going by what I know is what the facts and data are right now, what it would have been.
Okay. I lied. I have one more question. You mentioned the truck that was going out right now, the South Side truck. That's the new truck, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I know that we have another truck coming very soon, which April?
March of 23 is
Okay.
supposed to be here.
So assuming the unfortunate happens and this truck has to go out into the county now, and then there's a fire subsequently that comes in inside city limits. We have 2 trucks that are in extreme disrepair right now. What truck do we have available? It's in good condition inside city limits at that point if our new truck's going out into the county.
We still have the tower one, which could put out a lot of water on a structure fire. I'm glad you brought that up. And the reason I say that is because on ISO, to score the most points you can score on ISO, if we take the tower on a known structure fire, that is a lot of points. And that would be one way would help us with the ISO is by running that tower on any known structure fire.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, I have a question. So looking at the report that Corey worked on this weekend, the updated report, and working on the original one he sent out, there's actually there's a discrepancy of about 2, one being a building fire with the airport. Does that, for mutual aid given, is that one of our boxes too?
I'd have to look. Yeah, I'd have to look on that.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Maybe it
Okay.
was a discrepancy where it's not maybe
Here's
supposed to
how
be
the
on.
airport works. There's one place in the city of Ottumwa and outside the city of Ottumwa where Wapello County Volunteer Fire Department and Ottumwa Fire Department both respond out there. And it's been like that for a long, long time. And we send a truck out, they send a truck out, and occasionally we do have a working fire out there. And then if they have a working fire out there, we're going to obviously send additional assistance for that. But all of the businesses out at the airport pay the city of Ottumwa X amount of dollars. I couldn't tell you what that is because I don't know. They pay them X amount of dollars. But that is the one place where we have co-response right now. And that's
Okay.
been like that for a long
So
time.
then that could potentially not, one of those discrepancies could be because it's not, like mutual aid is not given. It's our responsibility too,
That's
which
not-
obviously the airport's ours, we should be. Okay.
Yeah, that's been an automatic response. That's the only place with an automatic response right now.
I would disregard anything with the airport just because,
Tim, can you go ahead and speak into the microphone?
I would disregard any of those airport ones just because that's an anomaly in the fact that its primary response area is Wapello County rural, but you provide extra services through contract through your leasees. So like Chief said, we both respond, and sometimes we work out medical calls. Like if you have a unit already going, there's no need to bring another one in. type of thing. So that's just a special case.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Again, I just wanted to clarify the discrepancy between the two reports. So thank you for that. I guess I have another question too with this report for mutual aid that we've given. So there are areas where it shows blue being building fires or structure fires, and then the yellow would be the box where with this new agreement, we would go be the auto call if approved. So, however, just correct me if I'm misunderstanding, with this new system, it's only for structure fires at this time, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So my understanding from looking at this is that we would actually not respond to a majority of these calls, or we would. The way you worded it made it sound like we would go out on all these calls too, which then again comes back to that discrepancy of just structure fires.
Councilman, are you talking about the right-hand side here? Is that what you're talking
Yep.
about?
So
Yeah.
like on the second page of that report, the last yes is a fire structure and other than a building. I assume that would be a box 1 call.
All the ones that said yes, that's where we would have responded on the initial call, on a box 1 call.
Okay,
The
but
other
like
ones were
a
not box 1.
odor of smoke, we would respond to that? Because I guess my understanding from reading and from talking to you and Deputy Assistant Benj is that we go out on, box 1s are only for building fires, structure fires. Correct?
So the way it's worded in the MABUS plan is it's a confirmed or highly likely structure fire in which we.
Can you talk into the mic for the
Sorry,
people?
highly
Thank you.
confirmed or highly likely structure fire. And what highly likely means is that if the dispatcher feels that there's a high likelihood, the caller says, hey, there's smoke in my house. My house is filling up with smoke. There's smoke coming out of the eaves, something like that. That's going to fall into that category. If it's just some odd odor, some undetermined odor, that's not going to meet the criteria.
Okay.
And the other thing about and Corey has had to go through, and we work together on pulling some of this data. We had to sift through some of this because just the way the fire reporting system is, there's codes, certain codes prescribed by NFPA. 111 is a building fire. And there's some all-encompassing opportunities there sometimes. It could be a house fire, it could be a shed fire. So we have to try and pull those shed fires and smaller ones out. So we're really talking about a structure fire.
And definition of a
residence fire.
structure fire would
Be
be,
a residence, commercial building, something other than a small outbuilding that's not going to affect a human life, essentially.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify too. So MABUS mutual aid box alarm system. Currently, our 28E agreement, we assist with mutual aid, correct? So I guess and I just talked with you earlier too, just asking questions too. So we are going from kind of like a hybrid or potential, what the agreement would be if approved would be like a hybrid of a mutual aid, correct, to an auto aid? Because there is when I've done my research, there's a difference between mutual and auto, correct?
So your 2080 agreement is your legal document that it prescribes how you're going to handle the fiduciary part of it. So you help us, you help me, and we call it a wash. That's essentially a real highlight of a 2080 agreement, barring any extreme circumstances. The MABUS plan is nothing more than a formalized SOG. So this is a
SOG
response-
standing
a
for?
Standard Operating Guideline. Thank you. Acronyms are bad. The fire departments all have standard operating guidelines that guide their everyday activities, what type of apparatus, what type of equipment they take to what type of calls. And so this is specifically a countywide uniform standard operating guideline and how we're all going to respond together to that structure fire or that extreme situation where life is likely threatened. And so there's kind of a delineation between the two. This is just a very robust response protocol. Your 2080 is more of your legally binding document that says, how are we going to handle who takes care of the equipment and the costs after the fact?
So I guess then my follow-up question is, what is, again, this is for everyone's knowledge too, what in our current what operating procedure that we're doing right now with the mutual aid where we're not labeled that box 1 is different, or what's not working with that to have us go to this new operating procedure?
I think the best answer to that is we're putting in writing what we've been doing for a long time, and we're changing a couple things on that, the response areas that we'd respond to.
The other thing is it gives the dispatcher the authority to make that call based on the prescribed protocol that the chiefs have outlined. The benefit is you're going to save up to 5 to 6 minutes by doing that. That's significant because every minute that a fire grows, it doubles in size. And so that can mean the difference between us making a successful life-saving rescue and not. And we've had those happen in our past. I don't want to get into specifics on past events, but I can recall one to you very specifically that this happened. And there was a lot of public criticism that the fact that Ottumwa Fire Department was not called. Now, we have no way of knowing if that made a difference, but public perception and public expectations are paramount, especially for us in appointed and elected offices. It just makes sense. You know, when these types of calls come in, they're high stress, they're high risk. And what's our purpose in government? It's to provide these types of services to our community. And so sometimes we have to band together and share resources to make those happen. You can see by the stats shown in the data you've been provided to you, it's not frequent. It's not something we do every day. We do 3 or 4 times a year. I will say that in the past several years, it's worked extremely well. I can give you an example in Dahlonega Township where Ottumwa was called out immediately, and that house still stands today and everybody's safe. And that is to the credit of that first responding engine from Ottumwa. So there are a lot of good success stories as well.
Does council have any other questions?
So I've got about 3 or 4 different subjects I need I need answers on. We'll go back to, you said the contract wasn't signed. This is an ongoing negotiation, basically how this is going. But in July of this year, in the Wapello County Mutual Aid Association minutes, you guys stated in their unfinished business, Mavis Plan Appointment Resolution, the resolution to be signed by the chiefs was circulated. The resolution confirms that the Mavis Plan and asked Dispatch Administration to launch the program, recognizing that it will be 6 months before it will be fully automated in the new CAD system. So basically, what we were given, that says that this is the final draft of it. This says that you guys signed a contract saying that this was ready to go and we're ready to go. So
Contract is the wrong word. There's no contract here. This is a response protocol. A
Okay.
response protocol, this is not a contract.
okay.
The 2080 is your contract. That
Okay.
doesn't change.
So-
This is a
so-
response protocol agreed upon by the fire executives of the county. And the Mutual Aid Association is not a governing body. It is a collaborative association that the fire chiefs get together and work on these things together. So, and if you remember back when we were a year ago, when we were here talking to you about the Central Square upgrade to dispatch, and this was a piece of that. So part of that discussion was this plan, and we did make some mention to that in that presentation about this would be part of that dispatch software. I don't have any more to add about that.
I can tell you, council member, why I signed that. I personally signed that myself. I signed that to move this thing down on the road, move it down the road, because I knew it was coming, but we didn't have all the information that we needed to do this. That's why I moved it on down the road. Now we're getting close. We're a month away from having a new dispatch center, which is going to be a game changer. I mean, that's going to be an absolute game changer. And this thing's going to have, we're going to have situations where we're going to see how it's going, if it's working right, do additional changes need to be made or not made, or what we can do with it.
So the resolution that was signed in July was just basically stating that this is an ever-changing program, that is not this, what we were given is not what's going to be implemented, which basically would be next month, because I think CAD system goes January 26th or something like that goes live. So you guys are still ever evolving this program. This isn't set in stone type deal, but this resolution that was signed by all the chiefs.
With dispatch coming onto play right now, this thing is getting closer to being done, completely done.
Okay.
So the resolution of these chiefs, keep in mind, these are chiefs, these are not elected officials.
Correct.
So this resolution is nothing more than a statement of congruency that they all agree upon this plan. And this is our starting place.
Okay.
And so we have to start somewhere. We have to put a plan in place, go forth and see and make tweaks and changes along the way. Every SOG that exists in the world today is an ever-living document. So even internally within the Ottumwa Fire Department, the administration is making changes and tweaks to those operating guidelines based on changes that happen in your community and within the department. That's just kind of how things work. And the fire service works that way, and the police department works that. It's just in public safety. I'm sure it's the same way for Larry in public works.
Okay. Since you're still up here, can you talk about the key card system that you're planning? You have a grant that you put together for. what is the exact extent of that key card system and how does it affect the Ottumwa Fire Department?
So the key card system is a whole separate deal, but it does have some play within in the Mavis world. So this actually started 2 years ago. Your IT director, Edward, had installed that system in City Hall. Works great. It fulfilled a security gap that you had here at City Hall. I applied for and received a Homeland Security grant to do that same type of service for the county buildings. So the courthouse, Wapello building, the jail. One of the greatest, or the law center, I should say. One of the greatest benefits for the law center is that the sheriff had talked to me about just how expensive it was to rekey that building when somebody left and they didn't get a key back. We're talking $6,000 or $7,000. It's a huge expense. So we did that. That was about $80,000 plus some extra money given to me by the supervisors from the CARES money to finish that. Then this past year, I applied for it again to do the same type of service for all of the fire departments in the county, including the city of Ottumwa. Again, fulfilling a security gap. If you think about all of the money you have invested that sits in the fire stations, that's a lot of capital dollars. And I know one situation existed in some of the volunteer departments is they have push button keyless system. Those codes get out in the community and your building is extremely insecure. You have a similar type of situation on some of your doors at the fire stations. What this does is give you greater accountability and security. So if you have somebody that you need to deactivate their access, you can do that at the click of a button. You don't have to rekey a building. The other thing that can happen at the discretion of the chiefs is giving access to other mutual aid partners into getting equipment into other people's facilities. So Councilwoman Galloway asked me that same question before the meeting, and I explained to her that there are times when a department will go to another department and backfill them. In more robust Mavis plans, you'll see that there'll be another column that says, okay, what's the call-up unit? We didn't go that far because we want to keep this simple since it's something new to us. An example. Eddyville Fire Department was out on a fire in Columbia Township one time. We sent an engine from Wapello County, went up to their station, and that would allow them to get in there and park their engine inside the station, especially when it's cold. Chief Manley and Eldon wants to give access to the Dallas Fire Department because they come in and fill their tankers into the station. That's where their access point is. So she wants them to have access. We give access to law enforcement to our facilities because that's just good practice for security. To be able to secure a building, come in and take care of problems if there's a bad actor there, that kind of thing. At the EMA facility, I have a lot of people I've given access to so they can get in and get that equipment that stays there for everybody's mutual benefit. So it gives us a lot of abilities to do that and restrict access, have greater accountability that we can't do with keys and keyless push button systems.
So so with the key system, you said that there's departments that are allowing other entities into their, you mentioned the one that was allowing us to fill from their, are we planning to give access to rural fire department, Eldon, anybody else to our fire department? Is that changing the way that we operate? Are we allowing, because obviously our Ottumwa Fire Department somebody should be there at all times. So are we going to change the system to allow other entities into our buildings through our key card system, or is that?
That's at chief's discretion.
Okay.
That'll be a discussion we'll have in the very near future before this plan kicks off next month. We're going to have that discussion. Corey might have had some discussions on this already about how we're going to do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of discussions, so I'm assuming that discussion is going to be had with the city administrator as well to keep him updated so that he can keep everybody else updated. And we can make sure that legally we are able to do all this stuff that we are planning on doing.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will tell you right now, Russ, that the 1 year thing, how this worked in 1 year, that's an absolute. We'll do a reevaluation January of 24. It'll go to council and they'll say, here's what we did. Here's the calls we ran. Here's what it cost the city. Here's how many trucks what trucks we went out with, et cetera.
Okay. My biggest issue with this whole Mavis plan, and I get the reasoning for it. I get the plan. I've looked through it. I've looked through the information you've given me. I've looked through the information that citizens of Ottumwa have given me. And so I don't disagree that we need to have some sort of a mutual aid hybrid plan to address some of the issues in the county. But just like a lot of the other things that we've talked about in the last 12 months, it comes down to communication. You can't come to us at the last minute and expect us to get all the answers together. We've been on this council for 12 months. Councilman Rowe's been here for longer. It should not be December 20th, the last meeting of the year before we start this plan, to have a conversation about this plan. You guys started this plan September or July, I can't remember, July or September of last year. And this is the first, a month and a half, 2 months ago was the first time I heard anything about this plan. And that should not be. And it was brought to me by a citizen of the city of Ottumwa that was concerned and had questions. If communication had been had for the last year and a half, those questions would have never been brought to me because the information would have been out there. You have firefighters currently with the city of Ottumwa that probably have no clue what is going on and are concerned that they may be put into a situation that they can't handle or that they shouldn't have to handle. Don't shake your head, Tim. You are signing a plan that you have firefighters that may show up on the scene. What happens if the city of Ottumwa sends a firefighter to the city of agency and there's a burning building there and somebody's stuck inside? And your next call out, your next person on scene isn't 15, 20 minutes away. Does that firefighter go into that building and rescue that person?
Ross, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to really disagree with you on this one because the firefighters knew exactly about this Mavis plan. They knew what was in it. They knew what was coming, what was possibly coming. So there was discussions there. There's nothing set in stone. That's why we didn't take it to the council yet. This is the very first thing I said when I got up here to stand and I started talking. I said, this is on me for taking it to the council tonight, but we've had discussions in the past. The firefighters know what job they do. They know the dangers of it. They know what could go wrong and what does go wrong occasionally. So I don't know why going to a fire and agency would make their job any more disastrous or dangerous than any fire call they ever go into Ottumwa. We average 40 or 50 fire calls a year.
I would think that being that far outside the city limits would be a little bit more hazardous.
It's not a new thing.
Okay.
We've done this before multiple times. It's not a new thing.
Okay. Well, that's
We're automating
not the
dispatch
way.
Process.
That's not the way
Tim,
I've
could
seen
you
it
come
in
to the
the-
microphone when you talk? Sorry.
This is not a new thing. We've done this many times over the last several years. This does not change the response. It changed the timing of the response, but it does not change the response. It doesn't change the way it all is going to happen. It doesn't change the calling of additional crews. It doesn't change any of that. So all of that you're being told is totally inaccurate.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll have to determine that over the next year, I guess, because when this plan goes into place,
Fair enough.
Well,
So-
let me add one more thing. Contractually, if we have a fire, we have to call Ottumwa Fire Department members before we go to mutual aid, before we go to automatic aid inside the city limits. But we will have Wapello County. We have what we call an all-call. We will have Wapello County firefighters that either man the station or they run calls while we're on the fire, or they come to the fire itself.
right. And you said that you discussed this with firefighters, but when we discussed last Wednesday, you said that you had only talked to one crew, and that on Thursday I asked you about it again. And you said you were having those conversations. So you might have had those conversations in the last week, but last Wednesday when you and Ben sat down, you said, I'm having those conversations currently with these firefighters. So you do still have firefighters that you had not conversated with as of Wednesday by your own saying that did not know about this fully implementing this plan, which I get. If you hadn't fully brought it to us, you probably hadn't discussed it with all the firefighters. So I appreciate you having conversations with the fire department, but like I said, for the last 12 months, one thing that we've stressed, and we've stressed this with not just the fire department, but we've stressed this with finance, we've stressed this with the city administrator, we've stressed this with everybody in the city. We have to have conversations, and I get your reasoning of wanting to have all the facts, but a conversation can be started at the beginning and then fill us in on the facts as you go along, just to give us a heads up so that when citizens do come to us to ask us questions, that maybe we can have answers besides, I don't know, I've never heard about it. Do you see where I'm coming from with that? Like, if a
I don't
citizen
agree
comes
with it. I'll be a council member. I don't agree with it. If the firefighter said they don't know that we've talked about Mavis, I don't believe it. I absolutely do not believe it.
Because if I understood what you said earlier, Tony, the Mavis plan is basically just putting in writing what the past protocols have been that people have been doing anyhow.
What we've been doing forever. The only thing we're doing is we're putting it in writing, a different way of putting it in writing.
So,
Go ahead. I'm going to agree to disagree because obviously I've been told other facts. So
Well, I think you're partially onto something, Russ. I think it's the advice I would give is to push back on the people talking to you about who have they talked to. Do they go directly to fire administration to get these answers? Because they're the experts. Members of your fire union have been to these mutual aid association meetings and asked these questions, and I assume take it back to their people. If not, they have a communication gap as well. So none of this has been done in a vacuum. None of it's been done in secret. None of that was done that way. I think you are correct. I think there are opportunities to do better at communicating universally.
and just to answer that, yes, I'm not saying that this is all one person's fault, because even as of 2 months ago, I asked the city administrator whether or not he'd heard about this. He'd heard about mutual aid, wasn't familiar with the Mavis system, but that's a communication that also should have been had. Go ahead.
Well, I am familiar with the Mavis system. I came from a community, and we had a conversation about a year ago about it, but I hadn't had anything since then.
Didn't know that it was going to be implemented as of January, right?
Correct. That part would be
Okay.
correct.
So even our city administrator hadn't been fully briefed and said, hey, this is going into effect in January. So a lot of my information that answers I get would be from the city administrator, because I don't have communication with the rest of the staffing. So if he's not familiar with the Mavis plan, or not knowing that this is going into effect on January, then there's a communication breakdown there. It's not just on one level. It's obviously, there's several levels of communication here. And I keep telling people that the strength of your organization comes from the amount of communication you have. So just having small conversations about it and escalating them as time goes by, that's what I want to make sure everybody understands, that you have to have those lines of communication. Otherwise you get to this point where we're getting 3 hours of information in 10 minutes.
Council have any other questions, comments they'd like to make?
yeah, I do. So it's been said multiple times that we're just putting into writing the plan that we're already doing, correct? So can you explain to us, so that there's a better understanding, what does it look like? If there is a fire in, let's say, agency, because that's one of ours, right? What does that look like right now?
Well, I didn't hear you. What did you say in fire where?
Describe to her what the process
So
is.
just describe the process, because I guess I had the process explained to me, and so it seems like we're changing the process. So I just want a better understanding of the process.
If we get a call for a structure fire, and we are box 1, the Ottumwa Fire Department will send 3 people in one truck.
I'm talking about the process right now. Like what happens right now?
Right now?
If there is a fire in agency right now.
If there's a fire right now in the agency, what would happen is they would have a fire, they would call mutual aid, and then they would call whoever responded to mutual aid call.
Right, respond to her.
Yeah.
So I know what you're asking.
Thank you.
So the critical difference is that it's the timing thing. So it's the 5 to 6 minute thing. So today, a couple things could happen. You get an experienced dispatcher that has been around for a while, and he or she knows they've been down this road before, and they're like, you know what? I know how this is going to roll. This is a house fire. I'm going to call XXX, and they do it. Kudos to them, because that's the right thing to do. There's not really probably a protocol right today that tells them to do that. Experience tells them to do that. What this plan does is enable and create the expectation for everybody to do that when that type of call comes in. So you get that confirmed structure fire, highly likely, however we defined it in the plan here. The dispatcher goes ahead and makes those calls up front immediately. It saves the incident commander from having to do it when they get on scene. It saves that 5 to 6 minutes.
Doing what?
Calling for mutual aid. So it's calling all of those departments that are going to be called in the mutual aid call anyway. It just does it 5 to 6 minutes sooner and automatically.
Okay, so I'm going to make you break it down for me even more. So right now, if there's a call-in agency, someone calls, says, hey, there's a fire, dispatch would call the agency department. The agency would go out and say, oh, I need more. I'm going to call, would it be Wapello Rural next? Or they just call?
Depends on your incident commander and their
Okay.
experience. So they could be fluent, know exactly who's next. You get a new incident commander, like, and they struggle for a little bit and they come up with
Okay.
who the next department is. Those initial few minutes are extremely chaotic for an incident commander, whether experienced or not. And so this just automates that first few steps in their process and getting resources on the road, and then allows them to focus on the operation, doing the C-size up, and then giving further instructions to those responding agencies. That's huge. That's
So
very huge.
the difference would be that more than likely, if a fire happens in agency is always called first, and then the dispatcher is waiting for the next okay to call the next department right now.
Currently, yes.
Currently. So this would be that in box one, the dispatcher for agency or for the agency city would call agency and Ottumwa, correct? Okay, thank you.
I do have one more question for you. So you guys have mentioned the dispatchers quite a bit, and obviously a lot of this will ride on what the dispatchers are able to translate from the 911 call. Is there going to be a lot of training with the dispatchers so that they understand what, when to call them out and whether this actually is a box one alarm?
Great question. So that's actually being built into the new Central Square software that they're working on right now that will deploy at the end of January. So when they bring up that event code that's tied to the structure fire, it brings them up some cards based on those political jurisdictions on each of those cards in your plan and says, okay, here's that order. So they don't have to go to a binder, flip through this, figure it all out. It's just right there on their screen and makes it nice and easy. So I think the training part is going to be pretty simple and just kind of inherently come with the new software. And that's part of the urgency that got us to, hey, let's get this finalized and kind of get a plan put together, knowing that it's like any other SOG, it's going to be retouched and revisited on a frequent basis and looked at. And if there's things that aren't working, we're going to figure those things out. And as Chief said, in your annual report that you'll get from Fire Administration, you'll get those numbers that says, hey, this is how many times we did these things. And what'll be new is we'll just talk about the MABUS plan. I don't know what's in your current annual report. I assume there's some discussion about mutual aid calls, but you should get that data every year as well.
We respond with the annual report. They get all the calls we respond to,
Including mutual aid.
including everything.
So for the dispatch report, basically there'll be kind of a checklist that'll kind of pop up, and they'll have to verify all this information before they make that call, kind of deal, or
I don't. That's a little bit different.
but there'll be something they'll know. They'll know that they have to call or the box one.
Yeah, based on that event code.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
I just have a comment. Everyone's asking good questions and you guys are giving good answers. I don't think that anybody's trying to get anything over on somebody, but Tony and I have talked a couple times now, and I told him it still don't look right. We shouldn't know a couple days before the last meeting of the year to vote on something, even though it may be the same thing. But all these questions that are being asked, we should have asked them questions at a meeting in July. And then this meeting here, we would have been done with this and everybody would have been gone. But you guys have to understand where we're coming from. All this information, and some of it we didn't get till right before the meeting. And then we're expected to go ahead and prove the stuff. That's where I'm coming from. The communication is key.
We're not asking for any approval tonight.
Yeah, we're not
No.
doing any approvals. We're just getting an update.
It's
from
just a
them.
discussion.
Yeah, and I guess just on a closing comment from myself to that point, and I've said this to both of you, so it's not going to be a shock when it comes out of my mouth. City Council has exactly two responsibilities to the citizens of Ottumwa. That's fiduciary oversight and that's policy oversight. This falls well within the bounds of both of those items. So, there have been some comments that, I'm not exactly sure how the City Council fills into this role. Well, I'm going to make the argument that this exactly fits into both of those pieces of the puzzle. So just moving forward, we'd appreciate having a full breadth of understanding of the moves that are being made and how it's going to affect the citizens of Ottumwa, because going back a couple of years, I'm the only person here that can talk to this. There was a considerable change that happened with the fire department, and you know, the fire chief wasn't responsible for that. Granted, we're talking about a little bit of a different situation, obviously, but the fire chief wasn't responsible for that. The city administrator wasn't responsible for that. The 5 people that were sitting on the bench were responsible for that. So in the event that something catastrophic does happen and we come short on firefighters for a situation, and Lord forbid the worst thing happens, somebody loses their life as a result of that, it isn't going to be the fire chief that takes the heat for that. It's not going to be the city administrator. It's going to be whoever the 5 people that are sitting up here that are going to be responsible for that person that's the victim of that catastrophic event. So not only from a fiduciary and policy oversight perspective, but from a accountability perspective, I would say that the responsibility to inform the council of how we go forward in this is pretty paramount.
Not to belabor the point, but with council's permission, I just had a couple of maybe clarifying questions to ask.
Go ahead.
So my understanding is that, and it was mentioned as 2080 agreement, 2001 is the most recent version of that. Was that
one I have?
correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, all right. And if I heard that correctly from a moment ago, rather than first on scene making the call for whatever aid is needed or making a determining call, it's going to be on the responsibility of the dispatcher taking that initial call from whoever is reporting?
Yes.
Okay. When we have incidents that are reported, I'm assuming there is a judicious level of resources utilized or sent out to respond. I mean, we could say more is better. However,
you mean
there's
the
that
city of
financial responsibility at the same time.
Are you mean the city of Ottumwa, or are you meaning outside the city of Ottumwa?
Anywhere.
Because in the city of Ottumwa, anytime we have a structure fire, it's everybody responds.
Okay, so let's say it's an
a-
accident. Are we sending all trucks to an accident first call?
On a 1050,
Get on
we send
scene,
the
you
north
need
side or
more.
south side.
You would send more, right?
Yeah, if they had multi casualties, we'd send a second truck on a 1050. On an outside the city of Ottumwa call, we would send 1 truck and 3 staff.
Okay. And so if we're relying on a dispatcher that's not on scene, not being able to assess the situation, and they determine that based off of someone saying they saw smoke, not flame necessarily, but smoke, they may say, well, that's a box 1. Let's call out agency in Ottumwa, or, if it's there, an agency. And it turns out, I don't know, it was not a fire. Now we've sent out resources that weren't necessary, and there's a cost to that. I'm just throwing out the hypothetical, of course.
There would be a cost to that, yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
like I said, city administrator, in the last 5 years since 2018, going by the MAPES plan, we'd have went out 3 or 4 times a year for the last 5 years. It's not something that's going to happen in a tremendous amount of time, but you never know anymore.
But under that, in 2018 forward, that wasn't a dispatcher making a call.
Right.
It was first on scene.
Right.
So there's a difference there. And there could be a lot more calls from somebody not on scene, not wanting to take a chance of a loss of life incident, saying, hey, we're going to send as whatever, just to cover our butts. There's a likelihood of that
That's
happening.
a possibility. Yes.
Okay. So the only thing I wanted to get back to the 28E that's currently on file, there is a significant change. A 28E doesn't just cover the financial responsibility, it covers process as well, reading through it.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about the fire chief or their designee being the one to request that response or that aid. And then the fire chief of the other agency being there to reciprocate or offer that aid. There's a decision process that's made there. Now I get this takes some of that out, saves time, etc. I would disagree that dispatcher not on scene would be the best person to make that call. First on scene, I think is still a better, and maybe systems I've seen, that is still the route they go. So I think there is maybe some fine tuning that could be done with this. but it is changing the process significantly. So the 28E will have to change in order to move into this automatic aid system. So I would disagree with that part there, thinking that the agencies can determine that because not much is changing. And under that, I think legal would be wanting to review that as well to make sure that all agencies are covered under this. At least I would recommend our attorney cover from the city standpoint.
And Phil, is that where we would add, if this were approved, something about reviewing in a year with the ability to opt out?
That is possible. Currently, you have a 30-day opt-out. The city has a 30-day opt-out of the mutual aid agreement, the 28E agreement. All they have to do is notify all the other agencies that are part of it, and within 30 days, we would no longer be part of it if that was our decision. So I would say giving at least a year is fair to try a different system, but whether you write it into the agreement or leave a 30-day out and review after a year, that wouldn't necessarily have to be part of this agreement unless all agencies wanted to do that 1-year review.
So the council's going to need to approve an updated 2080 agreement in the near future, it sounds like.
If we're talking about changing a significant part of the process, which is the way I read this, now I haven't had legal review this, but I would think that that would be part of any decision the council would be making. And this was approved by council and signed by the mayor back in 2001.
Any other questions, comments from anybody before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, thank you, Fire Chief Miller and Tim Richmond.
Invisio Public Dashboard for Comprehensive Plan. Recommendation, receive staff update and Invisio Public Dashboard.
And I believe we don't have to vote on this, but Zach, you're going to present, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'll just go through this pretty quickly. For a while now, Phil and I have been working with Invisio to set up a platform where we can do some regular updates on each of the action items that was included in the comprehensive plan, and so that we can track progress, maintain accountability, all of those things. And so this is the dashboard that has come together to be the public-facing part of that program. And I'll kind of just walk through a few things quickly. And then I'm working with Neapolitan Labs to have a place where this can live, a link to this can live permanently on the city's website. And then we can also talk about some other reports and things that we can pull for council members and other members of the public or department heads, things like that. So this is what you'll find when you get immediately to the dashboard. The wheel at the top shows for each of the items in the plan what the status is, whether it's green, on track, yellow, there's some disruption, blue, it's completed, and I think there's also a red color for serious disruption, and thankfully we don't have anything in that situation yet right now. The next thing, the sort of semicircle arch there, would be the progress toward completing all of the goals in the plan. And it's a 2040 plan, so obviously we're not expecting to be over halfway done yet, but we are at around 10%. And that can be measured in a few different ways, and we can kind of talk about that as we go through. If you scroll down a little bit, there's sections for each of the 4 core principles in the plan: housing, quality of life, celebrating diversity, and economic growth, right? Growth. And so each of those sections of the plan was also broken down into goals. So if you click on any one of those, Edward, you click on growth, this will show each of the goals that was in the plan, and then each of the action items within that goal. And then if you want to click on any one of those blue items there, like that one there, yep. This will show the last update that was given by the staff members. This is investing in airport infrastructure. So the airport director and probably the city administrator, some other folks would contribute to updates for each of these steps. And you can break that down. If you want to go back a couple pages, Edward, I can show a couple examples. Go up to housing. And then click that first goal, maintain and improve residential neighborhoods. And then it's got each of those action items. If you hit the first one, update the zoning code, that has an update as well. And it won't show necessarily in this report, but we can get in even a level deeper on the inside, and we can break that down to whether you're measuring completion just by setting a percentage as the person who gives the report, or if you put individual boxes to check each step along the way to completing that project. So in this case, updating the zoning code for regulations for multifamily home conversions. There's a few elements to that one, and they're check boxes. It's we need to update the zoning code, which we've already done, but then we also want to look at incentives for deconverting, which has not been done yet. And then so we'll do regular updates along the way. So this really just allows us to be really transparent about where we are with each of these items, to identify when we have disruption, to make sure that each staff member that has a role in executing each of these items is communicating where they are, to, all the way up, including to the council and to the public. So it's going to be a neat tool. We're looking at doing updates every quarter on this, and the folks at Visio have been really helpful. There's also a lot of neat things it can do beyond this. We can add a whole other plan with what we've already paid for. So if there's a different plan that we're working on that we want to measure progress for, we can do the same sort of thing, create a new dashboard, create new elements for a new plan. And then also types of reports that come around data. It's got a really neat system for plugging in that data and building some good visualizations and sharing those as well.
So besides reporting on the city's 2040 strategic plan, this software would allow every department, if they wanted to develop their own departmental goals, they could track them very similar to this?
So we'd probably want to have, if it was going to be sort of a thing where every department developed their departmental goals, we'd probably want to have that be some kind of one strategic plan for the whole city, just because we can only add one other plan for free, and we wouldn't want to add just the one department or something like that. But that's something we could do. We need to start having a conversation about what the other plan that we would track is. But what every department can do is collect the data that they collect and put it into here, or at least for some things that they want to be able to share publicly, and then create a dashboard of visuals. I've got a code enforcement one that has, it shows month over month permit and valuation data. It shows how many permits over 12 months, placard cases, things like that, in a really good way that you can visualize and see trends.
And then some of those departmental reports can be put into this information, and you can start to see the graphical things. So if we had one on economic development tied to the airport, maybe they're tracking gallons of fuel they sell every month, and they wanted to put that into a report. You could see that trend over time, or number of planes that come through takeoffs and landings. You know, there's different information. Whatever you capture, crime statistics that the police department has, you know, could be put into a report, the building permit data that Zach had mentioned. So there's a lot that can be done with it, and it's just a matter of identifying what makes sense and adding it in.
I think the other part that's important, though, is how are you going to effectively market it to the public? Because, you know, this is going to have the capability of being able to really show all kinds of progress, but we got to figure out a way to effectively market it so the public knows they can go to the city's website and pull this stuff up, because I think it's great information, and it really, I think, would help the public have a better understanding of what's going on in the city.
And over the next, I think, basically throughout the month of December, maybe going into January, is when each of the action items and goals gets its next update. And I think each of those quarterly updates is a good opportunity to say, you know, hey, check in with the plan, share the link, do those sorts of things, and really give a good update. Also, all of these things can be aggregated into a single report, and you just sort of pick and choose what level of depth you want or what sort of interests you have. And so we can produce just a housing report or things like that. And we're going to be looking at how we can build out reports that are helpful for the council, and then share those from time to time when it's appropriate, to help give an update as well, with just you know, a couple of pages that allows you to read and get to a sense of where we are in each of these items.
And this can be like translated using Google Translate on our website?
Yes, I think it should support, although it doesn't work directly with our website. It would just be working directly with Google, I believe, on the browser. I'll have to check about the translation, because I know it's come up before and I don't remember exactly. So this doesn't live, Neapolitan Labs doesn't own this. Once you click this link, you go to Invisio.
Okay.
So our translate feature doesn't work on this, but I believe there is a way. I'll have to ask them about that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll tell you, Zach, I've never been so excited about a website before. Like, when you guys first brought this to us, I was really excited, because how are we going to know what's going on with a comprehensive plan if we don't have something like this? This is talk about communication. This is a perfect piece of communication of how we know where we're at with that 2040 comprehensive plan. So I'm really big kudos to your department and to city administrator for getting this set up and getting going. When is this accessible by the public?
So this link actually works now. This is a public link that goes to the public dashboard. There's not a space for it on the website yet because I haven't gotten with Neapolitan Labs. I think what I'll probably do after today is at least have something on the planning website, the planning page under here, and then that can just sort of be one of the top lines on the key documents and forms page that we have until that gets put onto the homepage. So there's a way to get to it easily, and I can email the link out as well to the members of the council.
And who's responsible for actually updating all this information?
So each of the items has been assigned to the department head or department heads that are most involved. So I think everybody has a little bit of something, and then I know that Phil and I have a lot of them. But
Yeah, and I think over time, if we can distribute that, whether it's like Zach has some staff that he can distribute things to that they're more responsible for, and same with myself, then making sure. Because the other thing with the plan then is having the reports or updates every 2 to 3 months helps keep that fresh in the mind, so you don't have something just sitting there going stale as well.
Absolutely. What about our community partners that are responsible for some things? Are they reporting back to a certain department and then that department head is putting it on there?
yeah, so right now we don't have any folks that directly go onto the platform that aren't with the city. It just kind of keeps it within the enterprise account and the website or the email addresses associated with the city and those things. But we do, those department heads kind of collect information from the partners that they're working with on those projects.
You mentioned that we have one other space for other plans. Is the housing plan already incorporated in this plan then?
Yeah,
or-
so what I did on the housing section of this plan is I went ahead and added a few more steps that came out of the housing plan to what was adopted with the comprehensive plan. So that way we wouldn't have to add that as a whole separate plan. I just kind of built it out to include a few more of those things so that we can track them.
Awesome. I look forward to digging through some data on this.
It's pretty fun, especially when you start reading through each layer of it. So.
Council, have any other questions for Zach? Not, thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution number 284, 2022, approve changes to workplace violence and threats prevention policy. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 284, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to cover this.
Yeah. So Barbara put this together, and she had looked at the policy that was adopted back December 2021 on workplace violence, threats, and prevention. And some of the things that were added in at that time, we're talking about concealed carry and employees who might be able to carry weapons while in the workplace. So everyone remembers with changes in state law, pretty much anybody in the state can. However, employers can still have some employment practices that would prohibit or provide some kind of qualifications. That's what that policy did back in 2021. And as it says in the discussion, the staff summary, after going through our first round of qualifications, we had some individual employees who wanted to get qualified through the process that was put in place. There were some questions that came up and some clarifying information that was requested for the policy. This revision helps to take care of that. One of those questions was about employees required to qualify each weapon that they would be carrying. So they would be required under the change in the policy. That was a question that came up because it wasn't clearly defined. And the second one is employees would successfully complete the marksmanship and additional training during the same session in order to qualify to carry. So those are a couple of the things that were put into the policy to help clarify that and continue the process going forward.
Does council have any questions for Phil? Okay, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 286, 2022, approving an extension of the agreement with Heartland Humane Society for the provision of animal care services. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 286, 2022.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to start with this.
Yeah. So we had a work session on this a couple weeks back, and there was some good information that was shared at that time talking about the agreement and some of those changes for the benefit of the general public again, and the council and anyone in the audience. The key components of the extension that or revisions that are here. One was to include a longer term. This would be for a 3-year term. Prior, it was year to year that these agreements were coming up, and we're currently in an extension to get us through the end of this year. There was some help the definitions for expectations of both parties, and then the main thing is providing some compensation or guaranteed revenue for the shelter that wasn't there before. Previously, the city would give about $6,000 to $7,000 annually. That was the $5 per license animal tag that was sold, dog license fee tag. And then if the city collected anything from a person that recaptured their dog or cat from the shelter, so if the city brought it there, it was found out that their pet was taken to the shelter and they went to collect it and it was there 3 days, the person would be responsible for paying that $10 per day that was set up in the agreement, any other of the costs that might be eligible. Once they paid that, they get permission to take the animal. Those dollars were also turned over to the Humane Society, but that's not obviously a guarantee either. With this agreement, the city has in the past and is continuing to want to be able to have a space to bring stray animals that are picked up by our animal control. We're requesting that there be 10 quote unquote guaranteed or reserved spaces available. The difference in this agreement is this is looking at saying that we're willing to pay to hold those spaces. Under the old contract, it was $10 per day per animal. Under the revised agreement here, it was looking at trying to increase that to $12 per animal per kennel or per kennel per day, whether that's filled or not. And so based off of that, that would be an annual compensation of $43,800, whether we have animals there or not. And that is an increase over what we had before, where we were paying up to $7,000 roughly per year. So that's one of the biggest changes, I would say, is helping to guarantee some of those base costs. At that work session, there was a request from Councilman Rowe to kind of help see some of the numbers that were used. Those were sent over, and I think it was close to $300,000 or whatever it was in the year. Depending on what you divide by, if it's the dog kennels only or all kennels, there's a difference in cost. The average between the low end and the high end ended up being about $12. And so that's where that number came from. It is an increase over the $10. There is one other increase that was suggested in here by Officer Williams, and that was to increase, I think it was the rabies vaccination from $25 to $30. And that was added into here as well, as to increase that to $30. Outside of that, I think everything else we discussed. Also the revision was made from the work session about the Facebook page instead of website. Otherwise, the things from the work session were included in here.
So we're just reserving 10 kennels or 10 dog, 10 cat?
10 kennels total, could be 10 dogs, 10 cats, or a combination of whatever it is. The original one did have 10 of each, and it sounds like we weren't necessarily using 20 at a time, and it's not fair to reserve all of those if we don't need them. If we do go over the 10, if there is ever a time where we need more than that, we would pay in addition to that base fee, we would pay then the $12 per kennel per day that we would need any of the additional kennels.
Because we've done that in the past, correct? Where we've reserved 20, but we've utilized more than what we had, or we've had more than
I'm sure
10
on
dogs
occasion
at a
that has
point.
happened, and it might be more dogs than anything, but I would assume that has happened in the past.
So this is a pretty fair compensation of what we've agreed upon, and
It's an increase over what we've given in the past, and it's an increase over for the amount from that work session.
you said 42800, right? 42.
For $43,800. Yeah, that's about $3,600, a little over $3,600 a month, and that is paid on a monthly basis. If there's any additional costs month to month, those would be billed to us individually of that.
Okay, thank you.
Does council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 287, 2022, approving the reimbursement of state and federal funding related to the abandoned transit operations. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 287, 2022.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to cover this.
Yes. So following an extensive process, the city has received confirmation of reimbursement amounts requested by the state and federal government for funding was previously received by the city on behalf of the transit program. So in the past, when the city was operating Ottumwa Transit, we had the facility out on Emma. There were portions of that were built or remodeled, and it was using state and federal funds. Normally under the program, during the life of the agreement or the usage of the facility, things depreciate and the city doesn't end up having to pay anything. A couple years ago, when we transitioned out of the transit services and 1015 took over all those operations for the city, they were utilizing the building for a short term. They did not have an actual need for it. They were just kind of helping us out for a little bit. Wapello County Emergency Management has expressed interest in the building and is utilizing that space at the moment. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we couldn't just transition it to another governmental agency. The only way we could get out of that obligation was if it was transferred over to a transit-related purpose. So those were obligated dollars for transportation that came from the state and federal government, and it can only be utilized for that. So the only way we can actually transition over and allow emergency management or any other entity to use that building is if we satisfy this obligation. It has been over a year in the making of trying to get to this point. We had to have a special appraisal done on that facility, and then that appraisal had to be certified that was an accurate appraisal. That ended up being, I think, about $365,000 was the estimation value for that building. And looking at what state and federal, the total that they're requesting that we use for reimbursement is just short of $300,000. It's $299,747.22. Once we agree to pay that and take care of that, then that would give us the ability to own the building free and clear and be able to sell that to Wapello County Emergency Management, assuming they're still interested. And if they're not, we could sell it to anyone else. But I think it's the best for both of us to have that go to emergency management. It saves them the expense of building something different, which would be 50% roughly on us, on our shoulders anyway. So we pay this through the sale. We'll recover some of those dollars. And that agreement is currently being drafted by our legal team.
Does council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 289, 2022, certifying the population of recently annexed territory 1235 Hutchinson Avenue to the city of Ottumwa. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 289, 2022.
Move the recommendations presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. On November 1st, the council approved the annexation of a parcel at 1235 Hutchison. This is where the new Dollar General is going to be built. And Iowa code requires that the city adopt a resolution to certify the population of any newly annexed territory. This resolution certifies that this vacant undeveloped lot has a population of 0.
So it's more of a procedural thing that you need to do.
Correct.
Does council have any questions for Zach? It's pretty straightforward. Okay,
You
if
sure you
not,
got that count right?
Pretty sure. Although I shouldn't say undeveloped because they apparently started digging already. So
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 290, 2022, awarding the contract for asbestos abatement and demolition of the condemned property at 868 South Davis Street to Weston McKee of Fairfield, Iowa for the best bid, $3,500 for abatement and $9,400 for demolition. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 290, 2022.
So move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach.
all right, thank you. The next 4 of these are all awarding contracts for either asbestos abatement and or demolition. In this case, or in all cases, bids were accepted until 2 p.m. on December 13th. In this case, 1 bid was received for both demolition and asbestos abatement, and Weston McKee had the best bid in the amount of $3,500 for the asbestos and $9,400 for the demolition. So staff recommends awarding him the contract.
Council have any questions for Zach? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 291, 2022, awarding the contract for asbestos abatement and demolition of the condemned property at 1019 West 3rd Street to Weston McKee of Fairfield, Iowa for the best bid, $6,000 for abatement and $8,400 for demolition. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 291, 2022.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Zach.
Thank you, Mayor. These bids were also accepted until the same time, and in this case, 2 bids were received. Weston McKee submitted the best bid in the amount of $6,000 for the asbestos and $8,400 for the demolition, and staff recommends awarding him the contract.
Any questions for Zach?
Just one quick question. Since all 4 of these were awarded to Weston McKee, how far off was he in lower than some of the rest of these bidders?
The last page in the packet has the bid tabulation for each one. So in this case, he was about $5,000 total, more or less. In the last one, there was only 1 bid. And then in the next 2, the difference would have again been $5,000 for Albany and quite a bit, $13,900 for South Adela. Is that correct? That can't be correct. It is correct. Yeah, it looks like Mr. Larson bid $20,000 for the demolition of that one.
Okay.
Any other questions for Zach? Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 292, 2022, awarding the contract for asbestos abatement and demolition of the condemned property at 529 Albany to Weston McKee of Fairfield, Iowa for the best bid, $16,000 for abatement and $17,900 for demolition. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 292, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach.
Thank you, Mayor. This was the big one in an uncomfortable location with a lot of asbestos, so it's the expensive one. Again, 2 bids were received. $16,000 for the asbestos and $17,900 for demolition was the best bid from Weston McKee.
Council have any questions for Zach regarding this property? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Resolution number 293, 2022, awarding the contract for asbestos abatement and demolition of the condemned property at 115 South Adela to Weston McKee of Fairfield, Iowa for the best bid, $5,000 for abatement and $9,400 for demolition. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 293, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 bids were again received for this one, and Weston McKee had the best bids in the amount of $5,000 for asbestos and $9,400 for demolition.
Does council have any questions for Zach regarding this property? Not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
This is the point in our city council meeting where I'd ask if anyone in the audience has any items they want to discuss or bring up tonight that's not on our agenda. If not, we'll go ahead and move to the next item, which is mayor, city council report and or any communications. I don't have any particular report to give tonight, but I would ask if any of the council have any communications or announcements that they'd like to make.
Just a reminder, dog tags are now available.
Hope everybody has a good Christmas and a happy new year.
Or a happy holiday season.
Yes. Okay. If there's no other communications, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn our city council meeting
So
tonight.
moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for attending our city council meeting tonight. And as it's been already said, have a joyous holiday season and a good new year. Good night.